Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about 4 more operators, and this is probably the last video under operators and expressions. In this video, we are going to talk about parenthesis, we are going to talk about ternary operator, then we are going to talk about safe navigation operator, and finally, we'll also cover null coalescing operator. So let's start with parenthesis. And as we talk about parenthesis, I would also like to introduce a term which is called operator precedence. So the term is called operator precedence. So what do we mean by precedence? Precedence in general means that we want to give more priority to one thing over another. And operator precedence mainly means that we are giving more priority to one particular operator over another operator. Let's learn this with an example. First of all, we have an expression here. So the expression is 22 plus 2 minus 4 divided by 2 multiplied by 5. Okay. And if you see, we have multiple operators here. We have addition as well. We have subtraction as well. We have division as well, and we have multiplication as well. So what do you think will be the result of this particular expression? What I'm doing here, I'm performing this operation using all the operators, and the result is being stored in the result variable, and then we are displaying the value of this result variable. So what do you think should be the result? Pause the video and let me know your answer in the comments down below. Let's execute this code now and let's see what is the answer, and then we'll see how it is working. So if you see, the value of result is coming as 14. And how this value is coming? This value is coming because the precedence is like this. So division has more precedence over multiplication. It has more precedence over addition or subtraction. So I can say the highest priority is the division, then we have multiplication, then we have addition and subtraction. And we can also consider that addition and subtraction have the same priority. Because let's say if you do 22 plus 2 minus 4, or if you do 22 plus 2 minus 4, both are the same, right? For example, if you do 22 plus 2 minus 4, okay, so let's say if you do addition first, so it will be what? 24 minus 4, which will be 20, okay. Otherwise, if you do the subtraction first, so let's say instead of this, you have 22 plus 2 minus 4. So if you do this first, then what will be the result? Result will be 22 minus 2. And again the result will be 20. But this is not the case with multiplication and division, right? For example, what do we have here? We have 4 divided by 2 into 5. Let me clear this. And let's say if we do 4 divided by 2 into 5. So if I do 4 divided by 2 first, then it will be 2 into 5 and the result will be 10. Otherwise, if I do the multiplication first, then it will be 4 divided by 5 into 2, 10, and the result will be 0.4. So if you see, if you perform division first or if you perform multiplication first, the results are different. But in case of addition and subtraction, the results are not different. So what we can say? We can say that based on this result, we can figure out that the priority is like this. First of all, division is happening, then multiplication is happening, and then addition or subtraction can happen. Okay. So if you see, the main expression is nothing but 22 plus 2 minus 4 divided by 2 into 5. Okay. So what is happening? First of all, division is happening. So the result will be 22 plus 2 minus, then 4 divided by 2. It will be 2 into 5. Then I said multiplication is happening. So the result will be 22 plus 2 minus 5 into 2, 10. Then addition or subtraction, anything can happen. So let's say first of all addition is happening. So it will be 22 plus 2, which is 24. And then we have minus 10. And the final value will be 14, right? So this is how we are getting the result here. So what we understood? We understood that operators, if they are applied together in a particular expression, they have a precedence that they follow. Okay. Now let's talk about parentheses. Parentheses are nothing but opening circular bracket and a closing circular bracket. This represents parentheses. What happens if we apply parentheses to the same expression? If you see, here also we have the same expression, but the only difference is we applied parentheses here. So what does the rule say? The rule says that parenthesis has even more priority, or I can say more precedence over all these operators. So let's clear this, and I'm going to execute these 2 lines of code to see what happens this time. So if you see, this time the result is coming as 2. Okay, so the result is coming as 2 here. And if you remember the earlier result, it was nothing but 14. Now the result reduced to 2 instead of 14. Now let's see how does this happen. We know that parenthesis has more priority, or I can say more precedence over other operators, right? So the expression which is inside the parenthesis, or I can say this particular expression or these expressions, they will be evaluated first. So what is going to happen? Let's say the whole expression is nothing but 22 plus 2 minus 4, and then we have a divide, and then we have 2 into 5. Okay. So what is going to happen? The expression which is inside the parenthesis will be evaluated first. So first of all, we are going to evaluate this one. So it will be 22 plus 2 is 24 minus 4, and then we have a divide, and then we have 5 into 2, which is 10. Okay. So I remove the parenthesis because I have a single value now. And here we have 24 minus 4, which is going to be 20. And then again I remove the parenthesis because I have a single value, divided by 10. 20 divided by 10, the result is going to be 2. Okay. So this is how the result is being calculated right here. And this is how we are getting the result as 2. So what do we understood here? We understood that parenthesis has more priority over all the other operators. And if we talk about other operators as well, then they have a precedence, or I can say they have a priority order, using which the expression is evaluated. There is a very good page in the Salesforce documentation on operator precedence, using which you can find out which operator has higher precedence over another operator. For example, if you see here, brackets, or I can say parenthesis, has more precedence as compared to addition and subtraction. So these operator has a precedence 1, or I can say priority 1. Then we have priority 2 operators, then priority 3, which is multiplication and division, then priority 4, which is plus and minus. I'll give the link to this page in the description of the video, and you can check this out. Now let's talk about another operator, which is ternary operator. Ternary operator is also known as right associative operator. Okay. If you want to learn the difference between right associative and left associative operator, let me know in the comments down below, and I can create a separate video on that. But for now, let's talk about how this operator works. As the name suggests, this operator is going to work on 3 operands, and this operator is represented by a question mark and a colon. Okay. And if we have 3 operands, it can be like A, which is operand number 1, then we have a question mark, then we have B, which is operand number 2, then we have a colon, and then we have C, which is operand number 3. The first operand here should be a Boolean value, or should always result in a Boolean value. So this should be always Boolean, or I can say a true or a false. If this Boolean value is true, then the second operand, or I can say operand number B, will be assigned to the variable which we have right here. And if this Boolean value is false, then the third operand, which is operand number C, will be assigned to the variable right here. Okay, this is how it works. For example, let's say we have a variable which is known as age, and it is of type integer, and its value is 20. Okay, then we are checking if age is greater than or equal to 18. So this comparison, or I can say this particular expression, is going to return as a Boolean, right? Either it will be true or it will be false, because we are using greater than equal to operator here. So if my age is greater than or equal to 18 and it is true, then this value, which is Richard can drive, or I can say this string, which is Richard can drive, it will be assigned to my variable, which is result, and this is also of type string. Okay. If this value, or I can say operand A, is false, then operand C, which is there, this one, this will be assigned to my string result. Okay. So in this case, this value will be assigned to my string result. This is how this operator works. Let's execute this code and it will be more clear to you. So I'm just going to scroll a little and let's execute this whole code. So if you see currently what I'm getting the result as Richard can drive. Why I'm getting Richard can drive in the result? Because this expression is resulting in a value which is true, because 20 is greater than or equal to 18. This is true, right? So this is true, which is why the first value is assigned to the variable right here, and we are getting the result as Richard can drive. Now let's make it false. So let's say the age of Richard is not 20, it is 15. And I can execute the whole code once again. And this time if you see, the result is coming as Richard cannot drive. Okay, because is the age of Richard, which is 15, greater than or equal to 18? No, right? So this is coming as false. And if this expression turns out to be false, then the value, which is this one, or I can say the operand C, it will be assigned to the result. Therefore, I am getting the result as Richard cannot drive. That's all we need to understand about ternary operator. I hope this is clear. Now let's move on to the next operator, which is known as safe navigation operator. Now the safe navigation operator is represented by a question mark and a dot. This operator follows the rule: if the left hand side of the chain is null, the right hand side isn't evaluated and null is returned. Otherwise, right hand side is evaluated and its value is returned. This saves the code from throwing a null pointer exception. Now let's see how this works. For example, we have a list of integer which is numbers, so we have a variable which is defined right here. And if you see, this list does not have any value currently. So I can say that I haven't done anything like is equal to new list of integer, and I can do something like 5, 10, right? So I haven't done anything like that. Currently, it's just a list of integer which is numbers, which doesn't have any value. So what will happen if I try to execute this code and if I try to find out what is the size of this list? Pause the video, think about it, let me know in the comments down below. And now let's execute this code to see what will happen. If you see now, I'm getting a null pointer exception here. So I'm getting the result as System.NullPointerException attempt to dereference a null object. And why is this coming? We have heard about it in the previous tutorials as well. This is coming because numbers, or I can say the list of integer which is numbers, is null by default, right? And if we try to find the size of a list which is null, then it will throw an exception which is null pointer exception. Now, using safe navigation operator, we can navigate to this method safely and we can avoid throwing a null pointer exception. Let's see how this works. As I told you earlier, that this operator is represented by a question mark and a dot. So what I can say that whatever variable, for example this one, has a possibility of being null, I can apply safe navigation operator after it. Okay. So whenever we are trying to access any property, or I can say we are trying to call a method on any particular variable which can be null. And if you don't know about, calling a method or accessing a property, that's fine, because it will be clear in future tutorials. But for now, you know this thing that, we can call the size method on a list to find out the size. We have heard about this in the past. So whenever we have a possibility that something can be null and we want to access a property of it, or we want to call a method on it, we can use safe navigation operator to navigate this part safely. Let me execute this code once again and it will be clear to you how this is working. So I'm going to execute the code from here till here. If you see now, instead of throwing null pointer exception, this time I'm getting the value as list size is equal to null. Okay, so list size is coming as null, which means what is happening? Instead of throwing an exception at this point, it is assigning a value which is nothing but null to my size variable, and this value is displayed right here. So how does safe navigation operator work? As we have written right here, if the left hand side of the chain is null, so let's say we have a question mark and we have a dot, right? So this is the left hand side and this is the right hand side. So if the left hand side is null, then the right hand side is not evaluated. So this whole right hand side, if this is going to be null, then this won't be evaluated and a null is returned. So in our case, if we talk about numbers, question mark, dot, and then we have size method. Okay. So if numbers is null, which is left hand side is null, then this size method won't be called on this part. Okay. Or I can say this part is not evaluated itself. And if this is not evaluated, then this means that we won't have an exception, right? Because exception will come only when this part is evaluated, correct? So if this is not being evaluated, then there's no point of exception. So what will happen? Null will be returned. If the left hand side of the chain is not null, or I can say if this part is not null, then I can say that the right hand side is evaluated and its value is returned. Okay. So this is how we save the code from throwing a null pointer exception. We have already seen that if this part is null, then this right hand side won't be evaluated and null will be returned. So the size is coming as null. Now let's see the scenario when this part, or I can say the left hand side, is not null. So what I can do? I can assign a default list of integer to this variable. So I can say here is equal to new list of integer, and here we can have 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So what I can do, I can execute this code and let's see what happens. If you see, this time the output is coming as list size is equal to 5. So the list size is coming as 5. Why? Because this time we have a list which is defined, and if you see, the list of the size is going to be 5 only, because we have 5 elements. This is element 1, element 2, element 3, element 4 and element 5. So in case the left hand side, which is this one, is not null, then the right hand side will be evaluated and the result will be returned. So the result is being returned, which is coming as 5. I have added a note here which says that safe navigation operator cannot be used at the left hand side of an assignment. This essentially means that, for example, if we have a expression like this, let's say we have integer a which is 10, and then we have b which is null, and then we have something like a safe navigation b is equal to 5. Okay, so what we are essentially saying here, we are saying that if a is null, then don't evaluate b, otherwise evaluate b. So what will happen in this case? Let's try to execute this code once. So if you see, I'm getting an error which is saying expression cannot be assigned. So this means that this kind of operator, which is safe navigation operator, cannot be used at the left hand side of an assignment. So we cannot assign anything to this particular expression, right? Because variable can be assigned, but this kind of expression, it cannot be assigned any value. So this kind of safe navigation operator, like many other operators, it can be only used on the right hand side of the assignment. Now it's time to talk about the last operator of today's video, which is null coalescing operator. This operator is represented by double question marks. And what do we have in this operator? This operator says it returns the left hand argument if the left hand argument is not null, otherwise it returns the right hand argument. So if you see, this is very similar to ternary operator. It's just that instead of having any boolean condition, we are checking null here. So we are checking that if the left hand argument is not null, then it returns the left hand argument, otherwise it returns the right hand argument. So it is basically checking for null. We are also saying that this operator is left associative, and if you remember, we talked about ternary operator and we said that this operator is nothing but right associative operator. So I can create a separate video on this to differentiate between the two. Let me know if you want that in the comments down below. But for now, I can just say that if the operator is left associative, it means that only the left hand operand is evaluated first. The right hand operand will be evaluated only if the left hand operand is null. Let's learn this with an example. So what do we have? We have an integer num, and if you see, I don't have any value here. So by default, this will be null. And then I'm trying to apply null coalescing operator here. What I'm essentially saying here, I'm saying that if the left hand argument is not null, then use the left hand argument, or I can say if num, which is the left hand argument considering this operator, is not null, then use this argument, otherwise return the right hand argument. If this is null, then you can return the right hand argument, which is this one. Let's execute this code and this will be more clear to you. So I'm going to execute the whole code from here till here, and let's see the result. What we are getting here, we are getting that, so the value of num, which is this particular variable, okay, this num is coming as null. That means the value of left hand argument for this operator is null, and because this is null, I'm going to return the right hand argument. So the value of not null num, or I can say not null number, is coming out to be 10 here. So because the left hand argument is null, right hand argument is returned, and this is coming perfectly right here. Now let's consider the other scenario in which this num is not null. So let's say this num has a value which is 20, like this. Let's execute this whole code, and if you see, this time we are getting number is equal to 20. So this num value is 20, which is correct. And because this left hand argument is not null, it is 20, right? This value will be assigned right here, and this variable now has a value which is equal to 20. So not null number is coming as 20. What null coalescing operator do? It checks if the left hand argument is not null. If yes, assign its value. Otherwise, assign the right hand argument, or I can say the value which is on the right hand side, to the variable right here. Again, I have a similar note which says that null coalescing operator cannot be used at the left hand side of an assignment. So this means that, for example, we have two numbers here, num and num1. So num is null here and num1 is 10. And what I'm trying to do here is that I'm also trying to apply a unary operator here, which is plus plus, and I'm trying to keep it on the left hand side of the assignment. And essentially these both are the same thing. For example, what does plus plus means? Plus plus basically means that, for example, if I say a plus plus, this basically means that a is equal to a plus 1, right? Because we increment its value and then we assign it. Similarly, if I'm saying this part, which is num question mark num plus plus, this one, what this means? This simply means that num question mark num 1 is equal to this plus 1, right? This is what it means. So here also we can say that this is coming at the left hand side of an assignment in a way. And in this expression, we have explicitly specified it at the left hand side of an assignment. So ideally, we can also say that, if num is null, it should consider num1 here, and it should update the value of num1 from 10 to 11. Similarly, this is also the same case, because if num is null, it should consider num1, and it should increment its value by 1, and it should be 11. So let's execute both the statements one by one. For example, I'm going to comment this one now, and let's execute the code till here. And if you see, this time I'm getting an error, which is saying expression cannot be a statement. So this is another error, which is expression cannot be statement. And why this error is coming? Because the compiler expects a statement here, or I can say something which is static, which do not return any result, for example, a variable. But what do we have here instead? We have an expression, okay? So expression cannot be a statement, which simply means that, we cannot use it at the left hand side of an assignment, and this is not allowed, because here we are trying to use an expression as a statement. I can do the same thing in a different way. So instead of using this, we can use this. And if you execute the same code, and this time we are getting a different error, which is expression cannot be assigned. You can consider any of these errors. For example, expression cannot be a statement also means that you should have a statement where you are having an expression, because expression cannot behave as a statement, right? And similarly, expression cannot be assigned is very clear that this is an expression and we are trying to assign a value to this expression, which is not allowed. In general, these kind of operators, for example, null coalescing operator or this safe navigation operator, they cannot be used at the left hand side of an assignment. At the end, I have a link to this operator precedence Salesforce page, which I showed to you right here. I'll add it in the description of the video. That's all for this tutorial, and this tutorial covers our expression and operators in Apex. In the next tutorial, we'll talk about conditional statements, or I can say if-else statements. Let me know your feedback in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time.